Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you're having a good event and hope you've had a chance to watch the keynote, look at all the new innovations that we announced. This is a Microsoft Learn-based hands-on workshop experience where we will be sharing the end-to-end experience of migrating your servers from an on-prem location to Azure. My name is Pragya Pandey. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Azure Migration team. I also have a bunch of great stuff to share, and you will get a hands-on experience throughout this workshop. I'm joined by other folks from the engineering team and my team. I have Rahul Gupta from the Azure Migrate engineering team as a tech moderator. And we have some other folks who can help you with, if you encounter any technical issues with the lab environment. So the agenda for today is that we'll be talking about the common migration triggers or the motivations that we are seeing among our customers, and the common migration projects or scenarios that we typically see in organizations, right? So it's not just focused on Windows Server or SQL Server, which are the common workloads, but we also see other scenarios around app modernization. A lot of folks are trying to enable remote workplace. So virtual desktop infrastructure migration is another common workload that we are seeing customers migrate. So we will just have a few slides in the beginning, and then we will provide an environment that you can log into, and you can perform the migration steps along with me if you would like. But just a few notes, and I will share the details related to logistics on how you can access the environment and how even after the session you can perform the steps at your own pace in the next slide. But basically during the workshop, we will show you the entire process of discovery of your on-prem environment, assessment to make sure that you have a good idea about your cost estimates, the readiness of your servers before migration, and also all the different settings that you can apply for right sizing and cost optimization. And then finally, we will perform a test migration and migration using Azure Migrate, which is a central hub for all your migration needs. We will summarize at the end with some next steps and call to actions. So before we start with the slides, I would recommend you to launch the workshop using the link that we have here. So we have an aka link, aka.ms link that says Ignite 2020 Migration Workshop. So go ahead and launch the workshop. It will ask you to register yourself to gain access to the environment, and you will need a lab activation code. So this is the code that you can use. And remember that this environment will be available for 24 hours from the time you launch the lab, so that even if you're not able to perform all the steps today in this session, you always have the option to go back and complete the lab at your own pace. After we have all the 3 sessions that are focused on this workshop, we have, other than this, we have 2 more repeat sessions that will happen later today and tomorrow. The recorded session will be available on demand on the Ignite website, so you can always go back and take a look at that. The entire exercise should take roughly 50 to 60 minutes, so just so you know what to expect. And as I mentioned before, we have some tech moderators from the agency who build the environment to help you. And if you are blocked, you can always raise questions in the chat window, and they can help you and unblock you if you're stuck somewhere. This session is the first of this workshop. We have 2 more repeat sessions that are scheduled for today and tomorrow. So if you have, if you want to, attend those sessions again, you can do that. If you want to share those details with folks who are in different parts of the world, you can do that as well. So basically, this slide talks about the common migration triggers that we are seeing with our customers. And specifically, if you look at the current environment and as customers are trying to resolve the current crisis and build resilience for future and make sure that they are prepared for future, These are the key triggers or motivations that we are seeing among our customers. Now, as our customers start to support remote work-based models, they are looking at data center contract expiration as an opportunity or an inflection point to consider cloud migration. We have noticed that in some sectors there might be slowdown in migration projects, but a lot of businesses are also accelerating the pace at which they want to migrate their resources to Azure. And they're finding that their existing systems and solutions cannot keep up with the current demands in time. Especially in the healthcare and insurance industries, we are seeing that companies are struggling to keep up with the surge in demand. They also want to make sure that business continuity is addressed in the long term, and Azure and cloud solutions help with that in a great deal. A lot of businesses we are talking to are also facing with a lot of cash flow challenges, because if you have an on-premises data center, you have made heavy upfront investments in resources, so that your cash gets locked here, right? So if you're moving from on-premises to cloud, you are converting your CapEx operating model to OpEx, which gives you more flexibility and releases the cash that you need to invest in other critical projects. And we know that priorities are shifting, and cash flow challenges are really common that we are seeing with our customers. Cybersecurity threats, attackers are becoming more sophisticated over time, and in this current environment, people are feeling that they are more vulnerable. So they need stronger solutions. They need defense and depth mechanisms to help them in their fight against cybersecurity challenges. And cloud has a great solution to provide holistic end-to-end defense across your entire environment, be it users, devices, your web applications, or even your on-premise environment. So across your hybrid environment, if you're looking for holistic protection, we have solutions within Azure like Azure Security Center, and we have a great SIEM solution called Azure Sentinel that can help you gain end-to-end insights into your threat landscape. We talked about scaling of web application and infrastructure. We'll see how we have some managed solutions within Azure that can help you with on-demand scaling and high availability and performance needs that many organizations are dealing with today. And budget and resource constraints, again, as I said, that we are in unprecedented time. Things are shifting rapidly. Priorities are changing, and organizations are noticing that they have really tight budgets. So they're looking for ways to optimize their costs and make sure that they have more flexibility and elasticity with cloud. So what are some of the common migration projects that we are seeing among our customers? Windows Server, SQL Server are some of the most common ones that we see with our organizations, especially given the end of support that we recently had for Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2 and SQL Server. So that caused a trigger for most organizations to think about how they want to operate these workloads, and whether they want to continue investment in on-premises hardware, or they want to move to Azure. Linux and open source DBs. A lot of applications are running on Linux and OSS DB. So customers wanted a solution to help migrate these workloads from on-premises to Azure, and we have solutions that support that. Dev test is another interesting scenario. What we see with organizations is they make a lot of investments in the development and testing environment that they run on premises, and over a period of time, it incurs a lot of costs, right? So, and these environments may be supporting a legacy application that has stabilized over a period of time, or it may be greenfield applications that are developing in the cloud with cloud native solutions. So you have the option to move those servers either to Azure IaaS or to managed service like Azure Dev Test Labs. Web apps, again, companies are looking to modernize their applications to improve customer satisfaction, so that they're catering to their customers better, and also to make sure that they have all these auto scaling capabilities and high availability and performance. And cloud is a great solution to address those areas. We see some specific workloads in SAP and specialized workloads like Oracle, NetApp, VMware. These are again like common projects that we see that customers are looking to migrate. And then VDI, virtual infrastructure, which helps customers allow their employees to work remotely, is also an area that companies are looking to address. So we have a great solution. Now you can migrate your on-premises VDI infrastructure to Windows Virtual Desktop in Azure. So again, cloud is helping companies in all these areas, and this is a great time to reevaluate your migration strategy and take action to be better prepared for future. So these are the diagrams that just give you an idea about different migration scenarios. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Depending on your requirement, your business needs, you may need to move your assets either to Azure IaaS solution, or you may choose to go with more managed services in the cloud. So basically, this diagram shows here where a company is looking to migrate their on-premises LOB application into Azure IaaS. So you have, tools like Azure Migrate, which you can use to move your front end to Azure IaaS. So if you have your web app layer, you can move those to VMs running in Azure. And similarly, on the data layer, also you can run it if you have your SQL servers on premises running the database for your applications. You can move to a SQL on Azure VMs. So that's one path to go with. And then this one is talking about app modernizations, right? So if you have your .NET applications running on premises, you can move your front end or the web app layer to a managed service in Azure, like Azure App Service, to take advantage of the built-in capabilities that a managed service has to offer, right? So for applications, Azure App Service can help you with auto scaling, with high availability and high performance for your applications. And then for database, similarly, we have Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, which is the PaaS service for your databases, which you can run in Azure. So this slide talks about your migration of your on-premises VMware environment into Azure VMware Solution. So if you have made significant investment in your VMware environment on premises, and over a period of time you have developed the tools and the expertise in VMware, and you want to really retain those expertise, we have a solution where you can move or extend your VMware on-premise VMware environment into Azure VMware Solution and run your VMware application natively in Azure. So you get the advantage of native Azure capabilities, and you can also continue to take advantage of the VMware expertise, knowledge, and the tools that you have developed over a period of time. So again, like this is a great solution and a use case that we commonly see with our customers. I talked about VDI migration. Again, if you look at Azure Migrate, we do have the option to move your VDI infrastructure from an on-premises to Windows Virtual Desktop. And when we look at the Azure Migrate tool, you will see where we can find the option for assessing your VDI environment and migrating it. So to address most of these migration scenarios, we have a great tool called Azure Migrate, which is a free tool with your Azure subscription. So if you already have an Azure subscription, you can go check out Azure Migrate. And Azure Migrate is a central hub of tools for all your data center migration needs. It supports key migration workloads such as Windows Server, Linux, SQL, and other databases. You also have the option to move your data with DataBox. Web applications and VDI are also supported scenarios. Azure Migrate helps with comprehensive discovery, assessment, and migration capabilities powered by the Azure and partner tools. It's integrated with over 10 partner tools, including aka.ms and Turbonomic. So it's not just focused on the native capabilities, but you have ISV partner solutions. Azure Migrate integrates with them as well. And Azure Migrate enables you to plan and track your migration workflow, all the way starting from discovery of your source environment to assessment and migration. Now, these are some of the benefits or capabilities within the server migration tool in Azure Migrate. So if you look at the server assessment tool, it allows you to perform an agentless and comprehensive at-scale discovery of machines running on any platform. You may be running them in your on-premises VMware environment, or it may be in a Hyper-V. It may even be in public clouds such as AWS or GCP, or it may be physical servers that you're looking to migrate. You can leverage the CSV import option to do a bulk import of your source machines to perform quick assessment. The Azure Server Assessment tools also help you, optimize your cloud costs as you're migrating, and it gives you really good insights that can help you optimize your operating costs in Azure. And it does that by analyzing, actual resource utilization in terms of cores, memory, performance. And you will see when we are going through the demo, you will see that the tool provides right-size VM recommendations to efficiently meet the desired application performance in Azure. The tool also helps you with, inventory the application and software components that are installed within your servers. And there's a dependency visualization or dependency mapping feature, which can be performed either through an agent or agentless, which will help you, analyze the dependency across your servers on which your applications are running, so that you get a good idea about which servers to group or collect before you're performing the migration. Now, this is a powerful capability, and this is designed for a high confidence migration. So when you're performing the migration in waves, you get a great idea about which components to migrate together. So it increases the confidence with which you migrate these servers. Now, within Azure Migrate, we talked about the server assessment. We also have the server migration tools, which can be leveraged to migrate your source machines from any platform to Azure. Now, the server migration tool also provides agentless migration capabilities for migrating your VMware and Hyper-V machines, and an agent-based migration solution for migrating bare metal servers or VMs from other public clouds. When you have agentless migration option, you can ensure zero data loss while migrating your VMware VMs to Azure. Now, the Azure Migrate Server Migrate option also provides you an option to run a test migration and validate your application performance and migrate your applications with confidence. So with that, let's switch to MS Learn courses. So we have created a collection of MS Learn courses that are related to migration. So if you go to this link, you will see a list of all the MS Learn courses that are focused on migration. And these span across, different scenarios, migration of your on-premises servers which are hosted on VMware or Hyper-V. We have some courses on Linux and OSS DB migration and SQL Server migration as well. And we recently released one on .NET app modernization. So highly recommend go check out the collection of all the MS Learn courses, and you will get an idea about different scenarios and get step-by-step guidance around migration of specific workloads. Now, the workshop steps, before we dive into the real workshop, just to get you an idea about what we will be walking through. The first step is prerequisites in terms of permissions and privileges, and making sure that the accounts that we are using have the right level of permissions to perform discovery assessment. And some of these steps are already done in the workshop to save time. But you can always, go to our docs pages and MS Learn courses and read about them. We will then set up the Azure Migrate appliance for discovery. So in order for us to gain information about your on-premises zone or your source environment, we do need to configure an Azure Migrate appliance. So that will be the first step that we'll do after prerequisites. We will perform a discovery of the VMs. We will review the assessment. So during discovery, we will basically try to look at the metadata of the VMs and the servers that are running in the source environment, and also looking at performance counters. And once we have done the discovery, we'll pass on that information to Azure Migrate, which will help us build assessments. So we will review the assessments. We will start replicating the VMs which we are looking to migrate. After the replication is complete, we will perform test migration. So test migration is a great option for you if you want to analyze the results of the test before doing a full-blown migration of your production VMs. So highly recommend doing a test migration. It also increases your level of confidence in your migration and make sure that you address any issues that might happen during the test migration step. And finally, once we have looked at the results of the test migration, everything looks healthy and ready to go, you will perform a real migration. So let's launch the workshop. And I will give you a couple of minutes just to make sure that you are into the environment and you have registered. So once you launch the workshop link, it will show up a registration page where you enter your details, and we have an activation code that you need to enter. And our moderators can help you with those details if you're looking for the activation code or the link. All right, so I'm assuming that you have launched the environment and you are looking at this screen. So you will see that we have a lab guide that you can follow. This tab under lab environment has all the details of your resource group, the jump host, the credentials that you need to log into your Azure environment. And you can copy those details from here. So if you click on the copy icon here, you are able to copy it and paste it into the server. So you don't need to type in all these long details. So let's start. So basically, in this workshop, what we will do is we will perform a discovery of an on-premise Hyper-V environment that is running a web application. And then we will perform a discovery, we'll do an assessment, and we'll look at the results of the assessments and perform a test migration and then a final migration. So we have an on-premises application that is running here in a Hyper-V environment, which is basically a support ticket system that we are migrating from on-premises to Azure, and you will see how that application looks. So first, we'll set up the source environment. We will set up the Azure Migrate appliance, and we will go through the Azure Migrate configuration, appliance configuration wizard, so that the wizard, the appliance is set up correctly. It has all the details and the credentials that it needs to look into your source environment. And then we will set up an assessment. We'll review the results of the assessments. We will create and enable replication. We will do a test migration, and once everything looks healthy and there are no issues after the test migration, we will perform a real migration. So let's move on to the next step. Here, this is just talking about the details that you can find under lab environment. Let's try to log into the Azure portal with the credentials that we have for our tenant. Now, if you get option to start with the new Edge browser and you need to set it up, you can go ahead and do that. I don't need to do it here in this case, so I will just go ahead and try to log into Azure portal with my user ID here. So I don't want to stay signed in. So we are launching the Azure Migrate. So we are in the Azure portal right now, and you will see that if you want to look at the Azure Migrate tool, you can just search for Migrate, and here you will see Azure Migrate, and you can launch the Azure Migrate portal and see, how the dashboard looks like. But basically, those are the steps that you need to perform here in this exercise. Just make sure that you can log into the Azure portal correctly with the credentials that you have. Now, the next step is reviewing the app that we are running on premises in the Hyper-V environment. So this is the Contoso IT app. It's basically a support ticket system that Contoso is using in their environment. So this exercise will just give you an idea that this is a real living application that Contoso is using for their support system. So let's just give it a few seconds. So while it loads, we can launch the command prompt and try to ping the application. Let's see if the app is up. So here we have the Contoso support IT app. So you can see that there are different support tickets assigned to different people. They have reference numbers. I can go ahead and create a new one. So this is a living application where I can go create a new ticket and I can assign it to someone. So that is just to give you an idea about how a typical application running in a customer environment would look like that customers would like to migrate from on-premises to Azure. Now let's just go ahead and ping this application and see if we get a reply. You can see that we are getting a reply from the IP address of this web app. Now, minimize this and let's go to our Hyper-V manager. So let's take a look at the servers on which this application is running. So if you go to Hyper-V manager, jump host, you will see that there are 3 servers running here, right? So the Migrate next is the Azure Migrate appliance, which we have pre-deployed for this workshop. Web App 01 is the web layer, which is running on Windows Server 2008 R2, and it is hosting the Contoso IT web application. And Web MS SQL 01 is again running on Windows Server 2008 R2 with SQL Server 2008 R2 hosting the Contoso IT application database. So it's the web layer and the database layer, and this is the Azure Migrate appliance. Now, exercise 1 is around creating a migration solution. So what you will do here is basically go to Azure Migrate. So go to Azure portal, connect with your Azure credentials. So you can cancel the recommendations from Azure Advisor. On the search box, look for Migrate. So here we are looking for the Azure Migrate tool here. And then you will land on the landing page for Azure Migrate. Now, as I said, it's a free tool included within your Azure subscription. So if you have an Azure subscription, go take a look at it today. And it's really a one-stop shop for all your migration needs. So we address, Windows and Linux servers. You can move your SQL Server and other databases with Azure Migrate. And there are other scenarios like, web applications or VDI that you can, discover, assess, and migrate using Azure Migrate. So let's go ahead and click on Assess and Migrate Servers and change the migration project. This is the subscription that we are using for this workshop. And then the project, Migrate project, is you can get the details from here. So basically 222845 this is the project that I want to use for this workshop. And go back to the lab guide. Okay. Now, once you land here, you will see that within the assessment tools, right now you do not have any assessment tools added, but we can click here and add an assessment tool. Here you will see that you not only have option with the Azure Migrate Server Assessment Tool, but we have other ISV solutions listed here as well, right? So you're welcome to use aka.ms or Device 42 as your assessment tool. So here in this lab, we will go ahead and use Azure Migrate Server Assessment Tool and click on Add Tool. It'll take roughly 10 seconds to add it, and you will see that the deployment succeeded here. Now, in the next step, what we'll do is we will deploy the Azure Migrate appliance in the source environment. So remember, I mentioned that this appliance helps you look into your source environment and collect all the server metadata and also performance counters to send it to Azure Migrate, based on which we can create assessments, we can look at recommendations for right sizing and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and click on Discover. Here you will see that we have an option here how the machines are virtualized. Is it with VMware vSphere environment or with Hyper-V? So we will go ahead and select Hyper-V because this exercise is based on Hyper-V. And we have to generate, we have to give our appliance a name. So let's say project key. And then we generate a key that will be used for discovery. So it will take a few seconds, and make sure once the key is generated, you will need this information once you're configuring the appliance. So we need to copy the key and keep it in a notepad. I don't think we note that step in the lab guide, but make sure after the key is generated that you copy it and save it on a notepad so that next time when you're using the Azure Migrate appliance configuration, you need that detail. Okay, so the key is now generated. You can see the Azure Migrate project key is here, and I copy to clipboard, and I'll just make sure that I have that detail in a text document here. And then I move to the next step where I'm going to configure the appliance. So for discovery, we need to configure the Azure Migrate appliance. So these are the steps that will help us go through the entire appliance configuration manager wizard and perform the configuration steps. So let's go ahead and go to our Hyper-V manager. And this is the appliance that we have deployed for you before the lab. So let's go ahead and start this machine. And when you're working on this machine, you have the clipboard option for copy and paste. So you don't need to type in all the details here. Just remember that you don't need to type all the passwords and be worried about making mistakes. So just copy it here. All right, so we will go ahead and try to unlock this machine. And I copied the password use the clipboard. All right, cool. So now that we have logged into the Azure Migrate appliance, we need to go through the configuration. So you can launch the Azure Migrate management application here. And you will see that you get a prompt that your connection isn't private, but we have some steps to work around that. So let's wait for this to launch. Okay. Let's try one more time. Go back. Let's try to launch the appliance one more time. Okay. All right, looks like there's an issue with the appliance. Oh, there we have the link. Sorry, I missed that. So click on that link. All right, so now we are into the Azure Migrate Appliance Configuration Manager wizard, where we will go through a list of steps to configure the appliance so that it can start performing the discovery of my source environment. So agree the terms of use, and then you will see that we are checking a bunch of prerequisites in terms of connectivity to Azure, sync time, and then just checking if the latest updates are installed. So go ahead and accept the terms. You will see that the prerequisites are run. Now, this is the step where you need to provide the key that we generated in the previous step, right? So now we want to register this appliance with Azure Migrate, and we need the key that we generated earlier. So let's copy this key. And try to log in. You will see that there's a code display. Just click on next. And you need to enter the credentials to log into PowerShell. All right, you will see that the registration is happening. Once that is done, we can go ahead and provide the other credentials for the discovery sources. So let's just give it a minute for the appliance registration to finish. All right, so you will see, a green tick mark here that says the appliance has been successfully registered. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next section. Where we are providing credentials for the discovery sources. So add credentials. Friendly name for our Hyper-V environment. So you entered the Hyper-V admin details here so that we have the right level of permissions on the source environment to perform the discovery. Now here, provide details of the discovery source. Say add single item. Select a friendly name that you provided earlier for your Hyper-V host. And the IP address can be found here under lab environment. So Hyper-V host IP is this one. So copy to the clipboard. And then say save. So the validation of the details of the discovery source is complete, and you can see that the status is validation successful. Now in this step, you are actually starting the process of discovery of your on-prem environment, and this may take a few minutes. So let's just go ahead and say start discovery. And we can move on to the next step. So once the discovery has been successfully initiated, you will see a new prompt here that shows that discovery has been initiated. So we can go ahead and move to the next step where we create groups within which we will add the servers that we are planning to migrate. So let's go to Azure Migrate portal now. We have already created a project, so let's see. So let's refresh this and see if it's refreshing with the discovered servers that the appliance has found in the on-prem environment. You'll see that it's refreshing here. The bell icon gives you details about what is the process that's happening right now. We cancel this. Okay. So now here you can see that within Azure Migrate Server Assessment, the numbers for the discovered servers has been updated to 3. So these are the servers that were found by the discovery process. Now click on that, and now we are going to create a group to which we will add these servers that we want to migrate. In some cases, you can also use the dependency visualization feature, which is agentless for your VMware environment, right? And what that feature helps you do is it gives you a great idea about how different servers are dependent on each other within an application, so that you can group them together when you're migrating the application, so that there's no impact or there's no compatibility issue before you migrate. So here what we will do is we will create a group manually. So let's go ahead and click on create group and enter the group name. We can say Contoso group. And then you should see the the servers that were found by the discovery process listed here, and then you can add those servers to the group. Let's see, web app 01. I don't see it here yet. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes just for the servers to show up here. So let's wait. Maybe let me change this. Okay, there we are. So now you can see that I see a list of all the servers that I can add to this group. And in this step, what we're doing is we are selecting the web app 01 server, which is the front end of our application. And then we say create. Now we created this group. It will take just a few seconds. And then when we go back to Azure Migrate, let's see, did it? OK, so the group was successfully created. Now, when we go to Azure Migrate and we look at the discovered machines and the groups, you will see that we have a new group here. So let's just go to Azure Migrate, refresh. You will see our newly created group appear here. All right, so there's the group that we just created. Let's look at the newly created group. So you will see that web app 01 server is added to this group. All right, so next move on to the next step where we have to create and edit an assessment. So we have completed the discovery process. We created a group where we added, a server that we want to migrate. Now let's move on to the next step, which is around migration, around assessment. So, there's a tip here that, in this lab environment, we are dealing only with a few servers, but in, production environments, you'll have hundreds of servers and different groups, right? So we have different filtering options that can help you find the real servers that you want to migrate, and you can look at the properties of those servers to give you a better idea about how to group them and which servers to migrate first. So let's go ahead and start with assessment. So if we go to Azure Migrate assessment feature, let's see. So if you look at the server assessment options, you will see that we have an option to create an assessment. So click on assess. And you need to give an assessment name here, say, so assessment. Let's say we want to use an existing group for the assessment, and we need to provide the name of the group that we want to create an assessment on. Use existing, and then we move on to the next step, which is around reviewing your assessment details. So you can get all the details about discovering source and sizing criteria, which is performance based here, which is the target location, and so on and so forth. And then we click on create assessment. Once we refresh this, you will see that we have the newly created assessment here. There's the assessment that we just created. Now let's dive deeper into what insights we can gain from this assessment, right? So if you click on this, you get some really rich details about the readiness of your servers for Azure, right? So if you look at the first data point here, it gives you information around how ready your your servers are for migration, right? So you get information around Azure VM size, suggested tools, the operating system, and so on and so forth. So this information, along with the estimates that you receive around, cost that you will incur in terms of compute and storage when you're running your resources in Azure, can help you build your business case. So it's really critical to look at all these assessment details to build your business case. Let's go back and I wanted to show you the details around the cost estimates, right? Let me go back. Here. So you can get details around, how much cost you will incur in terms of compute and storage once the server is moved into Azure. And this is an aggregate of all the servers that are present in the group, but you can also get the detail at an individual server level, which will help you be better prepared for your migration. So a key step as a best practice that we recommend is to prioritize assessments and perform comprehensive assessments before, building your business case and building your detailed migration plan. So this is key. Now, if we go to edit properties, you will see some really good details around, target location, where you're moving your servers, VM size, the sizing criteria, which is performance-based here. So this is really critical in right-sizing your resources as you're moving from on-premises to Azure. So it's not just a simple lift and shift, but you're also optimizing your resources as you're making the move from your source environment to Azure. And this is really critical to make sure that you have, an ongoing cost optimization, cost savings in the long run. Then you can select the pricing details. And here you see this option for Azure Hybrid Benefit. This is a great option which allows you to use your existing on-premises Windows Server and SQL Server licenses on Azure and help reduce your operating costs significantly in Azure. So if you already have software assurance on premises, if you have active Windows Server licenses, if you use Azure Hybrid Benefit, it can help you save up to 49% of your total costs. So highly recommend you to take advantage of this benefit if you're looking at migration. Now let's move on to the next exercise, which is around setting up replication. So let's go to the Azure Migrate. Let's go back to Azure Migrate Server Migrate option, migration tools, right? So if you look at the migration tool, we have Azure Migrate Server Migration here, and you will see different options. There's an option to replicate, migrate, and it gives you details around how many servers are discovered, how many replicating servers are there. So now under migration tools, click on replicate. Again, in this dropdown, we want to mention how the machines are virtualized with Hyper-V. And here we'll say, no, I'll specify the migration settings manually. Now click on the SQL machine here and move on to target settings. So here you have to provide details around subscription, resource group, the virtual network that the machines will be moving on to, and then the availability options. So let's go ahead and select your resource group. Then virtual network will be ContosoNet. This is the subnet that we have created for this demo. And then availability option, let's just leave it as no infrastructure redundancy required. And then we move on to the next page where You need to provide information around Azure VM size, OS type, and the disk. So let's go ahead and in the VM size, OS type is Windows. And then here in Azure VM size dropdown, we have to select standard DS2 V2. And then we move on to the disk details here. We'll go with the default options. Move on to next. Here you can review the details for your replication. So look at your subscription, the region you're replicating to, the network, and whether you have applied Azure Hybrid Benefit or not. And then you just, you don't need to click on the replicate button here because we have already done that in the backend for this workshop. So if you go back and look at Azure Migrate, you will see that there's one VM that is already in the replicating state, right? So if you go back here, you can see that there is a server that is already in the replicating state, and you will see that the status is protected and healthy. Now, if you go to, let's see, let's go back. Okay, you have to click on the server, and then under compute and network, you see the edit button here. To make sure that the size is selected correctly. So standard DS2 V2 is what we want. And target network is ContosoNet. And target network interface type is primary. Now here you have provided the replication details for your server, for migration details for your server, and then you say save. All right, so here you will get an idea about your migration status. What is the health of the server? What is the test migration status? So this is a step just before you perform test migration. And once you perform a test migration and look at the status and make sure that no configuration issues, you can go ahead and perform a real migration of your servers. So let's go ahead and click on test migration. Select the virtual network, which is ContosoNet. And then you see the test migration option here. Click on that. You will see that the test migration process has already started. Once that has finished, you will get an idea about how the migration test migration happened, and you can analyze the results. You can fix things if there are some issues, and then after that you can perform a real migration. So you should get a notification saying that the test migration is done. So while we're waiting, Rahul and other moderators, are there any questions that you would like to address? Come off mute. Feel free to share what attendees are interested in.
Sure, Pragya. We had a lot of great questions on the chat. I'll just take up this opportunity to summarize a few of them. So a lot of folks here were interested in migrating VMware and AWS VMs. So we have published tutorials for discovering, assessing, and migrating VMware VMs. The steps of the process and the entire flow for Azure Migrate across discover, assess, and migration remains the same. It's just that there are some specific constructs related to VMware and AWS migrations that need to be taken care of, and you can follow our tutorials to get step-by-step guidance on how you can achieve your goals. Then there were other questions on using Azure Migrate versus Azure Site Recovery for migrations. And I just want to take this opportunity to clarify that Azure Migrate Server Migration is the recommended tool for server migrations to Azure. Azure Site Recovery is recommended for disaster recovery use cases. The Azure Migrate Server Migration tool provides all of the migration capabilities that you could get with Azure Site Recovery without having to deal with the complexity of disaster recovery specific constructs. So these were, and then there was another question that you had covered initially, Pragya, was can we migrate our 2003 OS, Windows 2003 servers to Azure? Yes, you can use the agentless migration approach to migrate 2003 Windows servers running on Hyper-V and VMware to Azure. And similarly, you can also migrate your Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2 servers to Azure virtual machines and get extended security updates for 3 years after the end of support dates without having to pay any additional charges above the cost of running the virtual machine. Back to you, Pragya.
Great, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those details, Rahul. All right, so it looks like the test migration has finished. So you will see that option here to clean up test migration. We highly recommend that, after you have performed test migration, do a cleanup so that you don't have the disk that you use for your test left behind, because it will incur cost over a period of time, right? So after you perform a test, you analyze all the results, make sure that you clean up your test migration, and then perform migration. So next, let's move on to migration validation. So for that, after we have performed a migration, you will see that within servers. So if you look at virtual machines. So this is the servers that we migrated. And you will see that there's a test appended at the end of the server. This indicates that the migration was already done, right? So we performed a test migration. The migration step was already performed through the workshop. And now that's it, like that application has moved on to Azure, and it's up and running. This showed the entire process of discovery, assessment, performing a test migration and migration. So in real scenario, you would, after test migration, you will clean up the test migration and do a final migration of your production environment. But it really gives you a guided approach into your data center migration. And along the way, you will see that you have optimization options and insights that can help you with building your business case right from the get-go. So I hope you had a chance to walk through the workshop and experience all the steps yourself. If not, as I said, the environment will be available for 24 hours from the time you launched the lab. So you can complete it at your own pace. We have some great resources on our docs pages. MS Learn courses are, again, great step-by-step tutorials into performing migration of specific scenarios. So you're welcome to go take a look at that. So in closing, let's just go back to our presentation. And just to summarize, what we're hearing from our customers is that, especially in these challenging times, migration can help them address the current crisis and also be prepared for future, right? So if they're thinking about enabling remote workforce in the current situation, we have solution like migration of VDI to Windows Virtual Desktop. In the long term, if they want to build a resilience with the BCDR solutions that we have in Azure, again, like migration is a great opportunity to help become more resilient and be prepared for future to meet the current demands or the surge in demands that organizations are facing. And we are seeing that customers are realizing the benefit of cloud, and they are willing to take that step. But they're really looking for that guidance around, what is the first step that I need to perform, or along the migration journey, what are the things that I should keep in mind and learn from others, right? So we are doing a lot of work around sharing best practices based on customer engagement. So we have a blog series that focuses on specific problems that we are seeing with our organization. So I hope those are helpful resources for you to accelerate the migration process in your environment. And then, you can leverage Azure Migrate. It's a free tool. If you have Azure subscription, you have access to the Azure Migrate tool. So please take a look at it, go ahead and see what options you have available in Azure Migrate, and you can start with some pilot projects before you think about a bigger migration project. So some simple, first pilot projects can be servers that are reaching their end of support, or if you have a software refresh or a hardware refresh coming up, right? Those are some great triggers to start thinking about your migration projects. In terms of next steps and CTAs, we have a website called Azure Migration Center. So if you go to azure.com/migration, Azure Migration Center is a repository of all the resources that you need for your migration needs. And it may be in terms of expert help if you're looking for programs that can help you accelerate your migration process. If you're looking for guidance from folks who are directly working on migration projects, Azure Migration Program is a great resource there. Or if you want to perform the migration project in-house, you have the capability, then we provide guidance around all the tools and resources and the how-to guidance that you need to perform your migration projects yourself. So for expert guidance, as I said, Azure Migration Program is a great way for you to connect with experts, and then Fast Track for Azure is another great resource that can help you during your entire migration journey and make sure that you have the right folks working with you hand in hand. We have a great tool called the smarttool, or Strategic Migration Assessment Readiness tool. And what this tool does is it asks you a few basic questions, and based on that, it gives you a heat map of your readiness for Azure migration. So we assess the responses in 9 different dimensions, and based on that, we give you a heat map that shows where you are weak or where you're strong for your migration project, so that you can go back and address the areas where you're weak. For instance, the dimensions may be your business case, or it may be your landing zone, right? So you may be good in landing zone area where you have thought about your destination environment in Azure for your migrated resources, but then you feel that you're weak in business case, right? So you need to go back and address that area. So it's a great tool for starters. I highly recommend to go check it out and take the assessment. And then Azure Migrate is our hero tool for your comprehensive discovery assessment and migration needs. So again, like if you have Azure subscription, go check it out, or you can sign up for a free Azure account and take a look at Azure Migrate and its capabilities. So with that, we have come to a close for this session. This workshop will be repeated 2 more times. I don't have the time slots handy, but if moderators can paste those details in the chat window, that will be great. We have some great migration sessions coming up, so highly recommend you to go take a look at those. There's one with Jeremy Winter. There's one, and Jeremy Winter is the head of our engineering that works on Azure Migrate. We have one from Abhishek, and we have other 2 sessions from Bharat, who is on the call here. So highly recommend you to go check out those sessions. If you want to do the workshop again, there are repeats happening for this session, so you can check those out. And thank you for joining us. I hope you have success in your migration projects, and feel free to provide feedback if there are things that you were expecting to learn, or if there are resources that we can help with. So thank you. Rahul, if there are any questions that you want to address, please take the floor. Otherwise, we will close.
Thanks, Pragya. Yeah, the questions that are coming on the chat are more scenario specific. So what I would recommend all the attendees is to identify your migration scenario and check out our resources. We have tutorials published for discovering, assessing, and migrating your VMware VMs, Hyper-V VMs, physical servers, and AWS VMs. If you can also discover and assess and migrate VMs from other clouds. You can treat those VMs as physical servers and follow our physical server documentation to achieve your objectives. Thank you.